When it comes to Wish, it feels like it's built around Disney's 100th anniversary more than it is meant to be a standalone film. And I'd even go so far to say it feels like a Disney Plus original movie that got pushed into theaters just because of how much it cost or because somebody had real faith in it and was willing to, I wouldn't say put their career on the line for it, but definitely put some money on it. So to summarize the film, in the Mediterranean, there's a kingdom named Rosas, and King Magnifico rules it as the seemingly gracious leader. He lost his family in some type of chaos and violence that isn't deeply gone into, and so, alongside finding his island, he also trained to be a sorcerer. And with his wife Amaya, they rule Rosas, and for at least a couple of generations have brought peace. But one of the ways that Magnifico keeps peace, besides being a sorcerer, is by collecting the wishes of his people. Now, the sell is that by giving over your wish, it takes away from some of your misery, your grief, and stuff like that. But the truth is, as is revealed, the reason why Magnifico wants wishes is because if people wish to have influence, if people wish to have power, anything like that, that could lead to history repeating itself and then him and his family being harmed. So he'd rather take the biggest wishes from people, collect them, and then allow for the type of peace that makes him feel safe, and as a byproduct, other people feel safe. Enter Asha, who is the lead for this, who is 17 years old, so she's right before the time at 18 when people give over their wish. And because of Queen Amaya really liking Asha because she's very much community oriented, Asha has an interview with the king about potentially becoming his apprentice. She learns about the wishes, she disagrees with the king about what he's doing, and so begins the issue of her deciding the king shouldn't have her mother or her grandfather's wish, they should have it back. And thanks to a little star, she begins a battle that becomes a war for her parents' wishes, that eventually becomes a war for everybody's wishes. And with the threat of undoing everything that he worked so hard for, the king decides to go to the dark side in order to protect what he has. So in terms of notable highlights, I'm not gonna lie, I'm an Ariana DeBose stan, and maybe it's because I've seen her on Broadway on the Donna Summer musical and a few of her indie projects, and also her rise to be an Academy Award winner. So with that in mind, I'm potentially biased, but this wish made me cry, both in its original one and also its reprise. And that's even with it not being that much of a complicated or hard-hitting song, but there's no denying the situations in which it's sung with Ariana DeBose's voice. It gets you in your feelings. Not enough to the point where, like some situations and songs, it's gonna make me cry when I talk about it, but it's definitely something that can get you emotional while you're in the theater. And I'll even say a good song also is Knowing What I Know Now, which could definitely become a rallying cry, especially with the upcoming political season, which is gonna definitely become nasty. As for base level highlights, I feel like as much as people want to complain about Disney being woke and all that, maybe they're hearing people and not making the, social commentary or whatever as heavy as maybe you could say it is in Encanto. But in the process of that, it makes it so that it kind of creates a boring story, but one that can still be considered something with depth. So, taking into consideration, the king knows that the wishes of the people can potentially bring down his empire. So, when they turn 18, which is when most people get autonomy, can start making decisions for themselves and all that, he takes their greatest wish, their greatest passion, and they often become cogs in the machine. You can argue that in terms of real life, it's kind of showing what things happen. The government, parents, whoever, say, you're an adult now, you can make your own decisions, but I'm not going to support your greatest decision unless it benefits me. And with that, you get a job that you don't like, just sort of you can pay the bills and handle your responsibilities, and you toil away knowing that you do dream or want something more, but also feel that unless somebody gives it to you, unless somebody really helps you with it, it's not going to happen. And we see with Asha's grandpa, who's 100 years old, he's waited his whole life for his dream to happen, which is just to have some kind of influence, maybe through music, and yet it hasn't happened in his entire lifetime, and that's 100 years. But you could even go and talk about Asha's friend, whose name I can't remember, but he's the big guy when you see him. He's just 18. He wanted to be a knight of some kind, but his dream was taken, and with that, you can see he's just a zombie. And it's sad to see, but it's also the reality for many who don't know what they want to be, because what they really want to be, it looks too hard. It looks like they need to have the right network, know the right people, so they just are kind of ghostly or zombies through life. And again, is Wish really trying to get that deep? Absolutely not. But could it for some potentially trigger these type of thoughts and feelings, and maybe kind of not invoke, but definitely press the idea that maybe this is what the film is talking about, and maybe that's what it wants to really show? There's a possibility. With that said, low point is Valentino. He's an he's an obligation, by no means an asset. Now, let me be clear. As an adult who's watched a lot of animated movies over his lifetime, Valentino is part of a formula that's used across animated movies where there's always either a smart talking or silly sidekick. Now, the kids who were in the theater with me, they enjoyed him because they haven't seen this character dozens upon dozens of times. But for me, this little goat that cracks jokes to try to make situations lighter but rarely offers any type of commentary or insight that would make them worth anything besides marketing for a new kid's toy, it does nothing for me. Valentino could have been cut and this movie would have lost nothing. Switching to the on the fence topics, it's definitely clear and sometimes gratuitous that this is about referencing Disney's past in more ways than one. The first part of saying that is that when it comes to Easter eggs, usually you have to be like wide-eyed and really listening in order to pick up on the different Easter eggs, but this one doesn't do that. It's very blatant. Peter Pan makes a physical appearance after being seen in one of the dream balls. They talk about multiple movies in terms of people's dreams, like some kids wishing for Mary Poppins, and that in a way would be fine, but considering the time period we seem to be in when it comes to Wish and where Mary Poppins is, I don't fully understand how the timeline works when it comes to Wish. Like, where in history are we where they can have Peter Pan walking around, but at the same time, Mary Poppins exists in some universe and can be wished for? It doesn't make sense. It takes away from, the bonus of recognizing an Easter egg when it just doesn't really click that well. Now, the second part about that is, I feel that when it comes to Wish, it's very much one of those films that is more inspired than inspirational. Because when it comes to one of the opening songs, Welcome to Rosas, it feels very much like it's borrowing or even taking from in content in terms of tone and the way that the song is presented. I would even say when it comes to the way that Magnifico is, there's almost a vibe that he's similar in a way to Ursula in the way that he sings, in the way that he handles wishes, and a lot of it seems to be like little things from other movies that tested well, else did well and people loved, and they tried to bring it into this film so that it can reproduce that in a sort of Frankenstein monster type of way. And unfortunately, it doesn't work. More often than not, if you may get the reference, you may get the idea, but the execution is just shoddy to the point where you recognize with this being a kid's film, it could do well, but honestly, it shouldn't, considering it's... I don't want to say it's lazy because am aware of how much it takes in order to animate a film, especially one like this, which is very beautiful in many ways, even though the physics for Asha's hair is terrible. But something about it just seems like they spent too much money, too much time to just do like WB does and make it into a tax write-off. So they decided, you know what, let's release it and hope for the best. We have a talented cast who can maybe market this up and really get people pumped. And who knows, even if it doesn't do well domestically, maybe in the international market it can, since even though it's not like all the way diverse, it might be diverse enough where it can pick up in certain markets and really make us some money. That's the vibe by the time I finished watching this that I got. Which leaves one last on the fence topic, and that's just the villain and their motive. It's understood why Magnifico becomes a villain. His family was massacred, a lot of their heirlooms and their culture was also taken away and destroyed. So him doing whatever it takes, even if it means going against a 17-year-old girl, it makes sense. But the problem is, like it is with any movie, is that you have this 17-year-old girl who has no powers, anything notably special about her, defeating somebody who's supposed to be not only a sorcerer, who clearly has magic, is not using like little tricks like pulleys and all that, but on top of that, he uses some book which is talked about like it was made by Lucifer, and yet he's still able to be defeated. And then add on that he probably has one of the worst villain songs that I've ever heard out of a Disney villain, and it's just disappointing on so many levels, to the point that it just feels like a lot of what we got out of this movie was formulaic or inspired by others because it did well, and thus the execution made it so we got Frankenstein's monster. And as many who ever seen any type of Frankenstein inspired or else the actual Frankenstein movie know, after a while Frankenstein falls apart. It has to be put down. And in some ways, I'm not saying that this movie should have never been made, but I do solely wish it was better than what it is.